Welcome to A Cup of Gratitude with Amanda Schaefer. Hi, I'm your host, and I'm so glad you stopped by. This podcast is really for anyone, anywhere, anytime. And it's about taking a moment to slow down and look around and actually see all of the good things that are there. There's no question that asks, is your cup half empty or half full? But I think a better question is, what's in your cup? I mean, a drop of gratitude will benefit your life unimaginably more than a full cup of anything else. So let's settle in and take a look at how we can shift our focus and embrace the joy and the wonder of the life that we have. And once you start, you won't be able to stop seeing the good. And just like me, you won't be able to stop talking about it. And somehow that creates even more. Even in the midst of difficulty, even when it's really hard, learn how to drink from a cup of gratitude. On today's episode, we have Dola Sparing, owner and founder of Project Bear, wife and mother of 5. Welcome, Dola. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to have a conversation with you. Thank you for coming. So I'm going to dive right in. And you and I talked a little before today. I was wondering if you could share with us your thoughts about grief. How has it changed you and your view of the world?
Wow. So my thoughts on grief have definitely changed a lot. At where I'm at now is that grief is basically it's love.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I think our society tries to fix it.
It's true.
And, sees it as something wrong. And, and if you can't fix it, well, certainly don't talk about it,
Yeah.
But grief is something that it's natural for humans to grieve when they've lost something that they love.
Yeah.
And for me, grief has changed me. It has really kind of shown me a little bit about myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was younger, I had these ideas of what, how a Christian should grieve,
Yeah.
And when I was going through grief myself, as I'm going through grief currently, those ideas, I'm realizing they aren't real,
Yeah.
So I was really shocked when I was going through my first real experience with grief. I was really shocked at how I grieved, and it was not what I thought at all. And I don't think it's what the majority of society thinks it is.
I think you're right. And I do think that it makes people uncomfortable and they don't know what to do and they do want to fix it. I mean, grief happens both immediately and over time. There isn't a time limit on how you experience it. So would you be willing to tell us a bit about how you've experienced grief in your life?
Yes. Grief for me is I think a lot of people want to see it as, the 5 stages of grief.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, there's denial and there's anger and bargaining and depression and then finally acceptance. And I haven't really experienced that, at least not in a linear progression.
Mm-hmm.
Grief for me has been very much, and I don't want to sound cliche, but it's been very much like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Where you might seem that everything is going great and then something just takes you by complete surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And it may seem wow, it's been years. Why is this still affecting me the way it is? And I've seen pictures where it's kind of like a squiggly line or a not bunch of headphones.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think as humans, we want things to be nice and tidy and neat.
That's right.
it's just that has not been my experience of grief at all. And I think that really learning that it doesn't have to be nice and tidy and neat, because humans aren't nice and tidy and neat. That's part of the battle.
Yeah. And it's probably so freeing to be able to just experience it how it comes.
Yes. Just knowing that whatever you're feeling on any given day is okay and valid.
Yeah. Yeah. People, like you said, are a little bit uncomfortable with how it really comes in waves and at different times. And everything that you feel, every emotion you have is valid. And grief is one of the deepest emotions. I thought it was wonderful in the beginning. You said it's love.
Yes.
It's part of every part of you.
Yes. And it's, if you don't love something, you won't grieve the loss of it. Or at least you won't grieve the loss for very long. And one of the things that I'm really realizing recently is, like, you don't stop loving someone just because they're gone. And so we want people to kind of stop grieving.
That's right.
That's like telling someone to stop loving that person, but that you don't stop loving someone just because they're gone. So, and yes, grief will change over time. Like, hopefully you don't get stuck in one spot. Like, it does change, it does grow. It's not all negative, but it's going to be with you because that love is going to be with you.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful. Would you share with us a personal story from your life that's brought you that kind of deep grief?
Well, almost 13 years ago, I was 37 weeks pregnant with my third child, and he was stillborn.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. He was a very healthy pregnancy, and we went to the doctors. It was April 16th in 2008. And we went to the doctors, or I went to the doctor, and it was a normal checkup. Everything was perfect. We set the time for our C-section. And then literally within 24 hours, I realized that I did not feel the baby move. Went to the doctor or went to the hospital, called my doctor, went to the hospital, and they said, "I'm sorry, there is no heartbeat." And we did an autopsy, and they don't know why he passed away.
Wow.
And then 14 months after that, we were pregnant with our fourth child, Vincent, and he was delivered at 36 weeks in about 2 days, and he spent some time in the NICU. And he was about 8 days in the NICU, but everything seemed fine, and they released him to go home. We brought him home, and then within 2 days or so, we started to get like kind of lethargic. And one day on the Sunday, he came home on a Wednesday night. On the Sunday after he came home, he went limp in my arms.
Oh, Dola.
And we called 911. They rushed him to the hospital, the ER, the local ER, and they worked on him for hours, and he had his eyes open, and they didn't know what was wrong with him, but they're like, we're going to send him to CHOP, which is Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And it was almost midnight at this point. We took an ambulance there. And at CHOP, they worked on him for about 3 hours. And finally, they told us around like 3 or 3:30 that they didn't think they could save the baby. So he passed away around 3:30 in the morning, that Monday morning, on June 15th, 2009.
Oh, I am so sorry for your losses. I mean, that to have it happen 2 times in such a short span of time, and how have those experiences brought you anxiety?
Yes, very much so. It was interesting because with my first child, my daughter, I had thought that I had had postpartum depression.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and looking back, I think that it would be better to be called postpartum anxiety, which is slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
But now with, I actually have a fifth child, Chase. He was born in 2010. And when he was born and while I was pregnant with him,
Mm-hmm.
there was so much anxiety.
Oh, I could bet. I bet.
And I was actually, after he was born, because he would fall asleep in my arms. Or even before he was born, I would, get very nervous and scared if he wasn't moving the way he was supposed to when I was pregnant with him. So I would go to the hospital a lot.
Wow.
And there were a few times where they would monitor me, and he lived up to his name though, because every time him, he would run away from the monitor, like, oh, chase him around. But that happened a lot where I would go to the hospital. I'm like, you know what, something's not right. I'm going to get checked.
Yeah.
And then when he was born, he would fall asleep in my arms, and it would give me a panic attack almost every time, because I would go back to when Vincent went limp in my arms.
Wow.
And I would carry him. The way our house is set up is we have like a 2-story family room, and then we have like a balcony banister type thing where our hallway kind of, you can lean over.
Mm-hmm.
And I would carry him to his room, and I would have a panic attack, being so afraid that I would drop him off the side.
Wow.
And so the anxiety was really bad, and I was actually diagnosed with PTSD. So that was not fun. But what I've realized now is the grief that, like, a lot of now, like, I don't feel like overwhelming sorrow. Like, that's not how I would describe my grief at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's happened is my grief has been channeled into my anxiety, especially when it comes to Chase.
Wow. I can hear it just in the story as you're telling it, the way that it unfolded. And it's so understandable. It's so relatable. If I were to try to put myself in your shoes, which I can't know what that feels like, but just the way the succession of what happened, I would totally feel the same way.
And it's strange because, like, I don't want to pass that anxiety onto him.
Of course.
Like, I don't want to be like so like smothering and be like, oh, Chase, you can't do this, you can't do that, but it can be difficult sometimes because I can get really my husband has taken to calling me Marlin from Finding Nemo. Because, and that's kind of, yeah, that's me,
Yeah.
And it's funny because my husband is Crush.
Right.
Go with the flow. And I'm like, oh, no, maybe you should wait another year for school. No.
No.
But it's weird because I'm trying to navigate, like, again, feelings are valid, and I know, like, okay, it's unlikely for anything to happen, but I know that bad things happen, obviously.
Right.
So, like, I have to balance that, and I've learned some techniques and stuff to, like, okay, what is, like, likely to happen? And yes, I can acknowledge that I'm anxious, but is that really likely to happen or not? And
yeah, I was going to ask you, does somebody else in your family, like your husband, or is there someone that can be there for you if you get really stuck in the moment?
Definitely my husband, Tony. He can definitely be that rock for me. And a lot of times it's just me going to God in prayer, saying, God, I'm really scared right now.
Yeah.
And it's that, it seems kind of strange, but just being honest, saying I'm scared, and I know there's really not a reason to be, but I'm really petrified right now.
That's not strange at all. As a matter of fact, the next thing I wanted to ask you about was how your faith has participated in giving you hope during the mourning process, the grieving process, and during this anxiety that was a result of that.
Well, it's interesting because, as I was saying before, like when I was younger, I just thought that, the way Christians should grieve would be like, oh, well, God's got it. Everything's fine. There's no reason to be sad, uh, but the day Jeremiah died, or the night Jeremiah died, when we were in the delivery room, um, we didn't know, first of all, if it was a boy or girl at first. And we didn't have any names picked out. Like, we had a few, like, maybe that we thought were possibilities, but we didn't. We thought we had a few more weeks, and we didn't even know boy or girl, so we didn't know. But in the delivery room, when we found out that it was a boy, I thought to myself, like, I need a name that says that God knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And my verse and my husband's verse and like our verse was Jeremiah 29:11, which is, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a future and a hope.
Right.
And I was racking my brain trying to figure out, like, I need a name that says that God knows what he's doing, and then it just hit me. I was like, wait a minute, I don't have to like come up with a name from the verse. I can just name him Jeremiah.
That's right.
So
That's
I was
right.
like, oh, Jeremiah. And that's how Jeremiah got his name. And it's interesting because, like, when I tell that story, like, it seems that it's just me from my younger self being, oh, well, I'm a Christian, so of course God knows what he's doing. But it was a very deep hope that, like, oh, but I really believe God knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And this really sucks. This really hurts.
Yeah.
This is really bad. And, like, this is real sorrow and this is real pain. But there was still that, but God knows what he's doing. I can trust him.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed my little boy's name to say that. And then when we got back to the recovery room, because I had a C-section, so it was like I was in recovery, my husband looked up what Jeremiah, like the name itself, means, and it means God will uplift.
Wow.
So,
wow.
What a perfect thing.
That's beautiful. I love it.
So that's, and that was the first thing was, like, okay, so my faith in that moment, and before then, like, nothing too bad had really happened. So, my life was really great. And I guess it's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, and it's like, now as I look back on my life and, there are moments where I'm like, man, like, is this, like, is my faith really real? And I think back to my experience of loss and how I clung to Jesus and I clung to God. I'm like, well, if my faith wasn't real, there's no way I would have been able to make it through.
Yeah.
Like, God brought me through that. And he didn't just bring me through. Like, a lot of people say, like, oh, what did God say to you? What did God say to you? And I was like, it wasn't what he said, really. It was his presence.
Yeah.
It
was with you.
Yeah. And I just knew there were times when I would just be like, sometimes, especially after Vincent died, there would be times when it literally felt like there was a dagger in my heart. Like, it felt like that it hurt to breathe.
Mm.
And I would just be sitting there or laying there and be like, oh, it hurts. I don't know if I can do this. And God's presence would be there. And I know that he was with me. I would know that he was with me. And I would feel him there. And that's real.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have been able to do it if he wasn't there.
Did you get angry with him? I mean, I know he can handle anything. When things were that, like, visceral, did you get angry about your loss with God?
I was definitely angry at times, but I don't ever, at least not consciously, that I could ever say, looking back, I was never angry at God.
No,
Like, there,
about your loss, not like at him, but that it happened. Like he could have done something else, right?
yeah, I mean, I was angry that it happened at times.
Yeah, yeah.
There was definitely anger. Um,
Because
like,
that's how I have feelings of anger about certain traumas that I've been through, where I'm not angry at God, but I'm angry like that I had to bear it. And the only person I could take it to was God.
yes, and that's what, and I think there. You're right. There is a distinction there between being angry at him, and I think that even if someone is angry at God, he's big enough to handle that.
That's right.
He knows if we're angry at him, and we can go to him and say, God, I'm angry at you, and he can deal with that, and he'll help us deal with that. But there were definitely times where there was anger, and it was funny the way it came out. Um, it's interesting because at first I thought, oh, I wasn't really angry at all. But as I look back, I have this thing called Time Hop. It's an app where you look back, however many years ago on Facebook and Instagram and all this stuff, and it shows me some of the Facebook statuses I would post
Right.
from after Jeremiah and Vincent died, and I was like, oh, this status, I was really angry when I posted this,
Yeah.
and it was funny because it was very often about sports and like the referees and the umpires in like Eagles and Phillies games.
Yeah.
And it seems like really silly to say that, but like I don't post that stuff now.
Right.
So I was like, oh, I was really angry. And I think there's what's the word? There's value in realizing and being honest, like say, yes, I was angry.
There is value in it because it is part of the process. Like you said, it's an ongoing process, but it is part of the process of loss.
Yes.
Because we do love and we want that love to be with us. We don't want to lose the thing and the person and the people that we love.
Right. And especially when you think that it's not something that, like in this century, where you're not supposed to have two babies die, especially nothing genetically wrong with them. We did eventually find out that Vincent had a staph infection.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a bacterial infection. They don't know how he got it. But it had basically, they said it was so bad that it had basically overrun pretty much all of his organs. And they were like almost twice as big as they should have been just because of the bacteria.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, but they couldn't tell us how he got it. So it's like that's not normal. And, we have great medicine. Like he was at CHOP. That's one of the best hospitals in the country. So that's something that, you can be angry at. Like, how did that happen? But then there was always that, I don't want to say a nagging, but like that still voice saying, but like, I know what I'm doing.
That's right.
Like you can trust me. I'm faithful. I will uplift, and so, yeah, there was anger. Not so much anymore.
That's good. That's good.
Especially those, I would say 2008, 2009, and even into 2010, probably even when after Chase was born, there was definitely some anger lingering there. And especially with the anxiety, being afraid that something was going to happen to Chase.
Yeah. And there seems to be stigmas with everything. I don't know what people have so much time to like judge everybody, but it seems to me like there's stigma that comes with infant loss and grief.
Yes, there is.
And that would make, I think, maybe for some of the anger.
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of people that either they think, oh, miscarriages happen all the time. So, well, you just kind of suck it up and deal with it. and they say, well, you can try again, and you have living children, so just deal with them. And there is like this taboo that, well, you don't want to talk about it because you don't want to upset anyone who's pregnant, or
Mhm.
you don't want to upset any new mothers. And it's like you're looked at like, oh, like the question that's not really usually said. I mean, unless someone's really cruel, but like what's there, the elephant in the room is, what did you do wrong?
Mm.
And even if other people aren't thinking it, like you yourself are thinking it. What did I do wrong? Like,
Wow.
could I have done something different to save my baby's life?
Wow.
And that's like, especially when it happens twice,
Hmm.
there were times where I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, like you wonder if people think, what do people think? Like what kind of mother do they think I am that I would have two babies die? And so there's that, and it's like, and then people just say the dumbest things.
Oh gosh. I can only imagine, because I know when I was pregnant, people said the most amazingly inappropriate things to me. So I can't even, again, I don't understand, understand people.
and and I remember my grief. She's like the grief counselor at Holy Redeemer. When we first lost Jeremiah, she was there. She was talking to us. She said, "Look, people are going to say dumb things."
Yeah.
Like she warned us. She's like, people are gonna say things, and she's like, but here's the thing: like some things that people say, you're gonna find comforting, and somebody else might find really not comforting at all.
Hmm.
And it's strange because like you just don't people like they don't know. I think a lot of times they're not trying to be mean, they're not trying to be dumb.
That's right.
Like they're trying to find something that's comforting, but I think what happens is a lot of times the person they're really trying to comfort is themselves.
Yeah.
Like they don't feel comfortable, like
They're
you said.
uncomfortable. Yeah.
Exactly. They don't feel comfortable with it. They want it to be fixed or out of sight, out of mind. So they want to say something to kind of sweep it under the rug as quickly as possible. They don't want to sit with you in your grief. They don't want to sit with you in the pain. So they want to say something real quick
Yeah.
because they're very uncomfortable with the silence.
Well, thank goodness for Jesus, because
Amen.
yeah, because he will sit with you in it, and it is a shame. It shows how surface level our society has become, that there are not that many people. Luckily, there's some people in our lives that are able to do that with us, but there's just not that many people. Everyone's seems like they're focused on things that I don't even know how it started, but everything seems focused on, how do I get ahead? How do I get this or that? What can I do for me and mine? And not about, how can I serve you? What can I do for you? How can I
Right.
help you? And that leads me into, that is who you are. That's the kind of person you are. And so you experienced all of this, and you ended up starting a nonprofit called Project Bear.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you could tell us how that began, and could you also tell us what BEAR stands for?
Okay. So you have to go back to after Jeremiah died.
Hmm.
We had our daughter and our son, Caitlin and Anthony, were almost 3 and 4 at the time. And, we were 37 weeks pregnant. So we had been telling them for months that they were going to be the best big brother and big sister. And they were going to hold the baby, and that baby was going to love them, and they were going to love the baby. And like, oh, it was going to be so amazing. So when Jeremiah died, it was, by the time he was delivered, it was like 11 o'clock at night. And we decided that because they weren't even 3 and 4 yet,
Hmm.
that it wasn't really appropriate for them to come to the hospital and hold their dead baby brother.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would make that decision now. I think maybe I would have them come to the hospital, but that's another story. But
Yeah.
we had told them, you know, you're going to be able to hold the baby and it's going to be so cool. And so we had to tell them that not only like were they not going to be able to hold the baby, that the baby had died. So Tony had to tell them the next day, because I was in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that Caitlin, she's older, she was the one that was almost 4. First thing she said was, "But I thought it was a girl," because she wanted a sister. She hasn't gotten her sister. I thought it was a girl, and she's like, "But I wanted to hold the baby."
Wow.
So we had actually been seeing a therapist, and thankfully we had we'd already had a contact with her, so we were talking to her. We're like, "What can we do?" She's like, "Before the funeral, why don't you get a baby doll, name it Jeremiah, and give it to her at the funeral?"
Mm-hmm.
You can say, "Look, anytime you want to hold Jeremiah, you can hold this baby doll and you can think of him." And we went to 3 or 4 different toy stores, and we were looking for a baby doll that was a decent size,
Mm-hmm.
that was not wearing a dress, because Jeremiah was a boy. So, or, not pink either, or
Right.
you know, we wanted the baby doll to have his eyes open.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very difficult to find a baby doll that met all of those criteria. We eventually found one, and then we also found a frog that we got for Anthony, because
No.
the song "Joy to the World" that
Mm-hmm.
says Jeremiah was a bullfrog.
Uh-huh.
So we're like, all right, cool. We have Anthony has a Jeremiah the frog, and Caitlin will have a Jeremiah the baby doll. And so we got them, we gave them the dolls on the way to the funeral in the limousine in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Well, fast forward to when I was pregnant with Vincent. This was like in the spring, maybe February-ish, maybe March. I don't know why. I was sitting at lunch one day at work, and I just had this idea. I was like, man, it would be really great if we could get baby dolls for other people who lose babies, for like the siblings.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that would be great. I was like, but man, it was really a pain in the butt to get a baby doll that was a boy. And I was like, man, like that would, some people don't even know if it's a boy or girl.
That's right.
So I was like, you don't want like baby dolls that are too small. I'm like, well, baby dolls just won't work. And I was like, man, but what is it that could have like a gender neutral thing that would have their eyes open, that aren't too big, not too small? And I'm like, I could be teddy bears. And I was like, I could call it Project Bear. And I'm like, what could bear stand for? And I'm like, BEAR. And I had to think, like, is that actually how you spell the bear? That's okay, BEAR. And then I was like, bringing empty arms, BEA. And I'm like, what could the R stand for? I'm like, relief, reprieve. And I emailed Tony. I'm like, here's my idea real quick, typing everything out.
Uh-huh.
And what could the R stand for? And he wrote back, he's like, how about really cute teddy bears? I was like, And I was like, all right, no. And then we came up with reprieve. So we're like, all right, bringing empty arms, reprieve.
That's beautiful.
So we started Project Bear, bringing empty arms, reprieve, and our original goal was to give bears to 2 hospitals in our area. One, Holy Redeemer, where we had our kids,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other local one, which was Abington Memorial Hospital. We wanted to give them boxes so that when they had their bereavement coordinator or whatever would be able to give out the bears for infant loss in the NICU, or stillbirth, or even a miscarriage.
Great. Yeah.
So that's how Project Bear started.
Wow. Well, very, very cool story. And again, so you started this, and what were your hopes and your expectations at the time? And how is it transformed?
Well, like, originally it was just, all right, let's get into some local hospitals. And that was kind of, the main focus at first. And then kind of early on, it was, well, maybe there's a way we could have a website where individuals could request a bear from us.
Great.
And so we're like, okay, let's do that. And that was, we just kind of figured it would be a few people here and there. And it turned out that became very popular. We have more individual requests now than we do hospital requests.
Wow.
But that was, our original idea was for hospitals. Now we have grown in our hospital presence. We got actually right now, since just January of this year, we've had 20 hospital
Wow.
requests.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's amazing. Think of all of those arms that aren't empty. That's amazing.
So, and it's been interesting how it's kind of changed. We have just for 2021, we just started also sending out bears for individuals who are struggling with infertility.
Wow.
And we have their shirts are a little different. Like, right, our standard bear has a ribbon on their shirt that says "Alive in Our Hearts."
Right.
And then our bears for infertility, they're a little bit smaller because we had to get them from a different place. And their ribbon says "Hope in Our Hearts."
Oh, that's wonderful.
So we just started that, and so that's going a little bit slower than the standard bears are, but we expect that to kind of be taking off a little bit as more people, because what we find is that as people get their bears, they post about it or they tell other people about it, and then they go to the website and then they request, and so a lot of people find out about us through word of mouth, which is great that it helps them, so they tell other people about it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, your desire to help others who are grieving just shines through your story. Why do you think that you want to reach out and help others so much? I mean, how does helping them affect you?
Well, for me, it kind of goes back to the Bible verse where it says that God is the God of all comfort and that he's going to comfort us so we can comfort others.
Yeah.
And like, I take that very seriously because like, I realize that in that moment when Jeremiah died and I knew that God was in control, like that was him comforting me.
Yeah.
And when I knew that he would uplift, like this is how he's uplifting me, is by giving me the privilege and the honor and the opportunity to help others who are hurting and to bring them, even it may seem like it just like the most trivial thing, like a teddy bear, but like so many people, like it means so much to them.
Yeah.
And like to be able to comfort them, and it's so interesting how it seems like so many people will message me or email me and they'll just say that the bear got there at just the right time. Like, oh, like today was an anniversary, or I was having a really bad day, or something to that effect, and the bear will get there at just the right time. And it's like, I know that that's God.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, like he just makes the bear, like he just makes it get there at just the right time. So like to be able to play a part in what he is doing in other people's lives and in other people's hearts, like that's what he's called us to do. He's called us to be his hands and feet in the world, and like one of the things that I realized is like, okay, especially during the pandemic, like we can't hug other people, but
yeah,
I can send a hug via a teddy bear through the US mail, like
that's brilliant. That's awesome.
So it's been really cool to be able to see what God does. And then what I try to do as I'm packing up the bears, or like as I'm getting ready,
Mm-hmm.
there's like a different, like a process I have to do as I'm, getting the labels printed and the cards printed out and everything. Like I try to pray as I'm doing that for the people that are going to be receiving the bears. And I'm always praying. I was like, God, I always say, God, like, use these bears in such a supernatural way that it can only be you. Like, you're the only one who can use these bears in such a way that can heal a heart, that can show them who you are.
That's right. That's
And
beautiful.
he, like, just time and time again, he shows me that that's exactly what he's doing with a teddy bear. And I'm
Right.
like, how cool is that? Like, how cool is my God that he can take a 9-inch fluffy bear and bring comfort to someone in like the time of like the worst grief possible.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's so cool, like that's just
It's amazing how this whole thing has come together. As a matter of fact, I understand that you were a school teacher for years and you recently left your job to run Project Bear full time because it has grown so much. I mean, how has that process been for you?
it was very interesting. Like at first, I left, and I was planning on just a year
Mm-hmm.
away, and I knew kind of going into it that it would be probably more than a year. And I just knew that there was so much that I wanted to do with Project Bear that I felt God was calling me and leading me into.
Mm-hmm.
And working full time, and then being a mother full time, being a wife full time, like
A lot of full times.
there's not a lot of time there to do Project Bear.
Yeah.
So things would get things would take a little bit longer than I wanted them to.
Right.
People were waiting, somebody would request a bear, and then um sometimes they would get a bear, they would get their bear within the month, but sometimes it would take 2 months or more, depending on how many requests we would get. And it really does vary. Like sometimes we might get 20 requests in a week. Sometimes we might get 100 requests in a week.
Right.
So it really depends. So really, we can't just say, oh, we're not Amazon Prime. We can't promise you'll get your bear within a week,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when I was working full time, like I wasn't always the one that was there, and like some things would fall through the cracks, and I had like all these dreams and visions of what it could be, and I was like, man, I really, like, I need to be doing that. I need to pay more attention to this.
Yeah.
This, I know God wanted me to do it. And after talking to my husband, I was like, okay, I think this is a career change moment here. And he supported me, and he was like, okay. And ever since we made that decision, like very soon afterwards, we had gotten 200 bear requests in one weekend.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was like,
Wow.
oh, okay. Here we go, kicking off.
That's amazing. Number one, that it's grown to that point that you could be reaching so many people, helping so many people. Also, that your husband was so supportive. I think that's fantastic.
He's been incredible through this whole thing, and he does a lot of the financial things, which is great because I wouldn't be so great at that.
It's always
But
good to have a partner. My son
yeah,
helps me with all the techie stuff and all the graphic stuff. I could not do what I do without him. That's awesome.
but
So,
it's been really great because like I've been able to, I don't even same thing with when I started Project Bear. I don't understand how I get the idea for it, which I can only explain, I guess, as the Holy Spirit giving me the idea, because it certainly doesn't come from me.
mm-hmm,
But I started making like jewelry to go along with some of the bears.
mm-hmm.
Like I have bracelets, and like they have like either baby feet or angel wings, and like hearts that say like son or daughter or I love you to the moon and back, like different things like that. So I started that, and I have like an Etsy shop.
That's
And
awesome.
so yeah, it helps people because it gives them like another, like a piece of jewelry to remember their baby by, but it also helps Project Bear because it all goes directly to Project Bear. So
Mm-hmm.
like it helps us fund Project Bear.
That's wonderful.
And I'm like, wow, like this, like it's so crazy how God has given me these ideas and called me into things that I'm not necessarily like kind of out of my comfort zone, if you know what I mean.
I
Like,
do.
oh,
I do. And I think those are the places where we really need to go
yes,
because we need him to do what he's calling us to do. When it's out of our comfort zone and we don't know what we're really doing, or it's really a big thing, then that's when you kind of know God's really behind it because you can't do it by yourself.
yes. And it's scary, but again, like just knowing who God is,
Yeah.
knowing that he's faithful, and like if he asked you to do something, he is going to come alongside you, and he's going to bring other people around you, or he's going to enable you to do it.
That's right.
Like, and you can trust him, like he's shown me time and time again that he is faithful, that I can trust him, and like he's able to do so much more than I could ever even imagine. And
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
like when I thought I started this, I didn't think we would have bears in every single state in the United States. Yeah, I didn't think we would have, within not even 3 months, 20 hospitals.
Yeah. Wow.
Like, I'm just like, whoa. And that's kind of like a normal few month period for us. Like, wow. And look what God's doing.
And
You know,
and it's just he's going to just keep adding new layers. Next time I talk to you, there's going to be something else. It's fantastic. It's such a great thing.
it's been fun watching what God is doing, even though it's been a little bit like, oh, I don't know what God's doing.
Yeah, it's nice when you get to look back and see the whole story as it unfolded, but while you're like turning the next page, it sometimes gets a little dicey.
Yes. It's like you don't have to see the whole staircase
No.
step.
Well, I was going to ask you, speaking of stories, so if you could give your younger self some advice, I like to ask people this, just the answers are really interesting. What would that be?
This is a question I always struggle with because if I'm being honest, what I would want to say is like listen to my gut
Yeah,
and like don't let the doctor tell me that everything's okay if I don't think something's okay.
yeah,
You know, because I feel that with both Jeremiah and Vincent, I would probably have changed some things, but I don't think I would change the outcome of everything because if I did, then I probably wouldn't have Chase and I probably wouldn't have Project Bear. So
yeah,
I think that my advice to myself or what I would tell myself would be just to that God knows what he's doing, like that what he says is true,
yeah,
and this is for every area, everything that he says, like that I can trust what he says.
yeah,
And even if it's hard, or even if it doesn't seem to make sense in the moment, that he really does know what he's doing.
yeah.
I
Well,
think that's what I would. That's the advice I would give my younger self.
that's very good advice. If you could give our listeners some advice about coming along someone who's in grief, someone who's grieving, what would that be?
I would definitely say to be willing to not try to say a bunch of stuff.
Hmm.
Be willing to sit with them. Be willing to go into the mess with them because it's going to be messy.
Yeah,
There are definitely times where they may want to scream and cry or throw things. Um, just to be in there with them and to not try to fix it for them,
yeah,
to come alongside them and just be with them.
yeah. That's very good advice. it kind of ran through your story as you talked about some of the different elements of how other people were. It's kind of the opposite of that. So that's very good advice. Thank you.
Welcome.
Do you have anything that you want to share with those who may be grieving themselves right now?
Yes, I would say everything that you're feeling is valid, and that feelings aren't facts, which means that you can have contradictory feelings at the same time.
Hmm.
So it is completely normal and possible to feel grief and gratitude at the same time. It is completely normal to feel joy and sorrow at the same time. It is completely normal to feel hope and fear at the same time, and faith and joy and love, and to be completely afraid and to be uncertain and to feel all these things all at the same time. And you don't have to pick one.
Mm.
You can let yourself feel all of them. And yes, you can maybe choose which one you listen to or choose which one you focus on. That's okay. But your feelings aren't the enemy. And if you let yourself sit with them for a while, they can actually teach you some things. And what they can actually teach you is about like yourself.
Wow.
So that's what I would say, is to just let yourself feel what it is you're feeling. Don't rush. Don't try to rush through your grief, because as we said before, it's love. It's not away unless you expect your love to magically go away.
Yeah.
So.
Wow, that's powerful. And, so many things that you've said during our conversation have been powerful. I don't think I've used that word so many times in an interview yet, because I think this is such a really difficult subject for people, and it's such a deep thing. And I appreciate your sharing more than I can tell you. It's just going to help a lot of people, and so wonderful to hear your story and how God has brought you through, been with you the entire time, and now has you helping comfort other people. It's a beautiful story.
Thank you. So it's been God. It's been all Him.
Yeah, well, and you give him credit and you give him glory, and that's exactly just shows your character and your faith and the way that you love God, and that's amazing. So are there ways that people who are listening, I'll put some information in the show notes, everyone, but are there ways that people who are listening could contribute to your cause if they want to?
Yes, actually, we have PayPal. They can PayPal us at donate@projectbear.us is our PayPal main address. And we accept any and all donations through there. And we also have a Patreon. And it's Patreon, it's patreon.com/Project Bear. And we get through Patreon, you would get like some perks.
Okay.
From some cool perks, like there's a perk where you get a memorial plaque, or you get your name on one of our YouTube videos that we have. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. That helps us out.
Awesome.
Follow us on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. And I think that is... Oh, we also have our Etsy shop as well at Project Bear.
Awesome. Well, you'll give me all that information. I'll put that in the show notes, but that's great. And if somebody's felt moved by your story and they want to help you help others be comforted, then they'll know how to go about it. That's great. Well, Dola, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing with us. I really appreciate your candor.
Well, thank you for having me, Amanda. It was so great to be able to tell my story, and I'm looking forward to what God's going to do.
Yeah, me too. All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Hey, so I just want to thank you so much for spending your time with me. And I want to challenge you to go out today and to just take notice and to stop and really look around and find at least one good thing, one thing to be thankful for. You know, if you do that today, you're going to find so many more things tomorrow without even trying. Because once you start, you begin to see what's always been there. And if you need a refill, you can come join me again for another cup. Make sure to subscribe and have an awesome day and go be grateful.